Hi everyone, welcome to another video. This is Mr. Chow from EnglishTuition.org. Now in today's video, we are going to talk about the importance of thinking skills. And let's start by talking about what happens when you don't think. Obviously, this has an impact on your academic results. So the first behavior that you tend to exhibit is that when you don't think enough, you only know how to answer questions that have been taught to you before. So in other words, for example, if you are attempting to answer a composition question and you only know how to do the topics that you have practiced before, and if during the PSLE examination or the end of year examination an unfamiliar topic comes out, and because you don't have the habit of thinking your own story ideas, then you may find yourself having difficulty trying to answer the question. And the next behavior is that you do not adapt well to changes in questions, especially when during practice you are given, say, comprehension questions that you're very used to doing. So you only know how to do questions if they come out in a very similar format and they need to be almost exactly the same. If they change the formatting or they make some slight changes within the question wording, then you're prone to making mistakes because you're not thinking, you're just trying to use your usual approach on a set of questions that has some changes in it, right? So that's not going to work very well and you tend to make mistakes. Now the questions could be asking for very similar information. It could be a similar type of question, but just that there are minor changes here and there. And because you're not paying attention and because you're not thinking enough, right, you just assume that these questions are the same as the ones that you've done before, and therefore you use your own approach instead of adapting to the question, right? So and then that will cost you some marks in the end. And the next behavior that I tend to see is that sometimes students follow instructions blindly. Now, whenever you learn something new, right, in the beginning, it is all right to follow the instructions given by your tutors or your teachers because you have completely no idea what to expect. You have no idea what to do, all right? So the tutors or the teachers will try to support you by giving you some form of instruction so that you have a starting point, all right? But the instructions are not there to ensure that you follow every single step of the instructions in a blind fashion, and then you stop thinking on your own. After a few practices, after a few rounds, after a few demonstrations, you should start to develop your own thinking thoughts, not your own thinking processes, right? So that you start to question the instructions that are given, right? Can I improve upon it, right? Can I do something different, right? If you're not sure, you can always validate your ideas with your tutors or your teachers to make sure that you are still on the right track, right? I often see students, especially when I give out instructions for compositions, and writing is a creative endeavor, right? And we always want students to be creative and to be imaginative. So you can't actually be creative and come up with a 100% original story if you are just following my instructions blindly, right? Step 1, do this. Step 1, step 2, do that. Step 3, do this, right? And you tend to put yourself in a box and you can't think out of the box, right? So this is an undesirable behavior in this case because you tend to follow the instructions too staunchly and you don't change and you don't adapt, all right? Right, so this is another example, right? And students tend to ask me, what's the minimum word count for a composition, right? And the instructions given, right, for PSLE, let's say, they say, right, at least 150 words. Are you going to follow the instructions blindly? You'll be, a tad silly if you're just going to write 150 words for your composition, because that is most likely to give you just a borderline pass, right? So don't just take the instruction as if like, it's the Bible and then you just have to follow every step of the instruction, right? Try to outdo the instructions, right? Try to exceed expectations, okay? Try to give more, right? And demonstrate your language skills. Then you tend to do better. And behavior number 4, some students, when I don't give them clear and specific instructions, like step-by-step instructions, they don't know how to proceed at all. So for example, right, if I say that, no, we are going to do discursive essay writing today, and these are the steps, right, that is usually how we can proceed to approach a certain type of discursive questions. Then after that, during practice, I give them a slightly different set of questions without giving them follow-up instructions, and then they are lost, right? They don't know how to proceed, right? And they have questions in their head that they are unsure of how to proceed, and yet they do not ask those questions, right? So a thinking student will not just keep quiet, right? If you're unsure of how to proceed, then at least ask some questions, right? So that then I have some feedback, and I know where you're coming from, and I can try to give some advice, okay, and to give further support if necessary, right? So here's an example for the students, right? Sometimes they don't know, like they're unsure of how to create a revision plan. Okay, if I don't give them any clear instructions, right? And then they don't start their revisions at all, right? Okay, the other behavior that I observe, behavior number 5, is that sometimes I observe that even if students, they do have the existing knowledge, for example, they have learned certain vocabulary before, right? And they've learned the sentence structures before, okay? But because they are not thinking, right? So as they are writing, they are not using their existing knowledge in their exams. There's a tendency for students to always revert to the comfort zone, right? So they always revert back to what's the simplest to them, right? The simplest words, the simplest sentence structures, right? And they don't want to venture out of this comfort zone because thinking requires effort and thinking requires energy, and they don't feel comfortable doing that. So they want to revert to something that they are very comfortable with, right? With simple sentence structures, simple words, simple phrases. And that's a waste, because you have spent, a period of time, prolonged period of time over the years, building up your vocabulary, building up your knowledge, okay? But then during the exam, you don't take the opportunity to demonstrate what you know, right? So during the exams, all the more it is important that you be the thinking student, okay? And don't just be very passive, right? Be more active, take the initiative, and demonstrate what you have learned over the years. So to avoid all those behaviors that we have just discussed, what you want to do is to start being a thinking student, right? So how do I become a thinking student? I have some tips for you here. So the very first tip I have for you is start by relying less on others over a period of time, okay, and develop independent thinking, right? Of course, you don't want to go to the other end of the spectrum and stop listening to your tutors and your teachers. That's not what I meant, all right? But you do have to start to rely less on the instructions that are given by others, okay? And then form your own opinions and start to have your own thought processes. That's the only way that you can develop your thinking over time. You can strengthen your thinking over time, okay? The next tip, okay, which is what I've just mentioned, learn how to form your own opinions about certain subjects or issues, right? Every time you're faced with an issue that is unfamiliar to you, now is the best time to practice your thinking, right? Sharpen your thinking, okay, and ask yourself, how should you respond? And what is your opinion for the given issue or for the given situation, right? You can get a lot of inspiration just by reading the news articles. You may also start forming your opinions by having discussions or conversations with others, and then over time, some of others' opinions become your own opinions, right? Because they are mixed with your own thoughts. And tip number 3, start to sharpen your minds by exposing yourself to different ideas. That is, try to read more, because then you can see and explore, right, all the different perspectives that other people have, right? Otherwise, you will just be looking at issues from a very myopic point of view, right? Very narrow point of view, and you fail to consider lots of interesting perspectives that may be offered by others. So students who do not like to read, sorry to say, you're at a disadvantage, okay, especially if you're a secondary school and above student, where you really need to start to form your own opinions, okay, about certain issues. So read more. Okay, number 4. For younger students, just think about how you respond in different situations. Don't worry too much about advanced level of thinking, right? As long as you're able to come out with some kind of reasonable responses for any given situation, right? For example, if there's fire, what do you do, right? If you're faced with a bully, what do you do, right? Even when you're crossing the road, okay, on a busy street, what do you do? If you find and pick up a wallet on the street, what do you do? Right, so these are the kind of situations that you can imagine putting yourself in, and then try to think of good, reasonable responses. Right, and of course, if you're not sure, please always check back with your teachers and with your tutors, and hopefully they can help you out. Now, how about the older students? Right, so just now the situations I mentioned are a bit too childish. Right, for older students, sharpen your reasoning by showing an interest in debates. Right, debates means you're always considering both sides of the issues. There's the black, there's the white, there's the pro, there's the con, right? So what is so good about the internet? What is so harmful about the internet? All right, and also if you read more, right, and you expose yourself more to the news, right, you would see some very interesting articles, and then you start to have discussions or conversations with others about what you read in the news. You'll be surprised, right, to find that there are actually so many different other opinions, right, from other people, right, and you may not agree with one another all the time, right? That's when all the disagreements come in, okay, and you can have a very interesting and fruitful discussions, and over time, okay, you start to see the reasoning, right? So if you have a certain opinion and you compare your opinion with, say, somebody who is older than you, right, like the opinion of your teachers or your parents, and you find that actually they have a different opinion from you. Now it is your job to try and find out why are their opinions different from you in the first place. What's the reasoning behind those opinions? So every discussion, you take away something, you learn something, and over time you sharpen your reasoning, and hopefully you don't make a lot of reasoning errors when it comes to your essay writing. So that's what I tend to see, and it is a huge problem, because every time I see students trying to support their points with explanations or examples, they tend to give examples with weak reasoning, and they fail to see that the examples have weak reasoning, right? And so if that's the case, okay, it will affect their discursive and argumentative essays. The only way I can help these students, okay, is that I help to sharpen their reasoning over time, okay, by giving them more and more examples. But ultimately, the students will need to rely on themselves to a large extent to try and improve on their reasoning. All right, and with that, we have come to the end of the video. So I hope you have enjoyed the video and learned something useful from it. If you like the video, do remember to leave a like and a subscribe. And if you're serious about signing up for English lessons, you can learn more details from EnglishTuition.org. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Bye bye.